There are moments when the soul has screamed so much within that the body begins to fall silent, not out of defeat, but from an ancient wisdom that begins to awaken, as if it finally understands that noise does not move the universe. Bruce Lipton reminds us that the conscious mind is creative, but it's also noisy, full of voices that compete, trying to control the uncontrollable. Meanwhile, the subconscious, where the deepest programs that shape reality reside, only listens in silence. Speaking too much is often fear disguised as effort. It's a desperate urge to be heard by something greater, without realizing that true communication doesn't come from the throat, it comes from frequency. Excessive words reveal anxiety. They reveal doubt. It's as if we're trying to convince the universe, when in truth, the universe only responds to what's vibrating inside of us. And this is why, to truly manifest, we must quiet ourselves. But this silence isn't the absence of sound. It's a vibrational state. A state where the body stops emitting emotional noise and begins to tune into the invisible intelligence that flows through everything. When we're in stress, we close off, just like a cell that contracts in a hostile environment. Bruce Lipton explains that the internal environment determines cellular behavior. And when we stop the noise, the environment changes. The cell opens, the body listens, the field responds. Greg Braden adds another powerful layer. The quantum field doesn't respond to what you say with your mouth, but to the coherence between what you feel in your heart and what you believe in your mind. And that coherence only becomes possible when we quiet the noise of anxiety and allow our frequency to speak for us. This isn't about abandoning prayer or intention. It's about learning to be still after the asking, about stopping the push, and starting to co-create. This is what spiritual silence means, a vibrational space where surrender happens without effort, where intention dissolves into the field like a seed cast into the dark soil of creation. In that state, you stop forcing and start resonating. You stop trying to convince and begin to align. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is fullness. It is the womb of manifestation. And perhaps, just perhaps, it's there in that stillness that your soul finally begins to be heard. There's a particular kind of fear that arises in the absence of noise, a fear not of danger, but of facing what has long been hidden. For many, silence is not peaceful. It's confronting. It brings us face to face with what we've avoided through constant thinking, constant talking, constant doing. In the stillness, there is no one to impress, no story to maintain, only the raw presence of self unfiltered, unmasked. And for the spiritually unaligned, that presence can feel unbearable. We often fear silence because we've learned to identify with the voice of the ego. That voice narrates our lives, fills our minds with commentary, justification, criticism, and expectation. It creates the illusion that we are in control. But silence strips that away. In silence, the ego loses its stage. And what's left is the uncomfortable realization that control was always an illusion. That perhaps we never truly listen to ourselves, only to our noise. Mental chatter gives a false sense of certainty. It occupies the space where intuition could speak. It keeps the unknown at bay, but silence invites the unknown in. It invites us to feel what has been buried: grief, confusion, emptiness. And that invitation can feel threatening, especially when we've built our lives avoiding those feelings. There is a hidden pain beneath the resistance to silence. It is the pain of unmet validation. Those who cannot quiet themselves often carry a deep, unhealed urgency to be seen, to be heard, to matter. They speak not to communicate, but to fill the silence that mirrors their inner absence. The truth is, the quieter we become, the louder our soul becomes. But we must first be willing to meet that voice without distraction. Silence is not void, it is a mirror. And the reason it scares us is because it reflects everything we haven't yet dared to feel. There's a subtle desperation in the way many of us speak to the universe. We repeat affirmations like mantras, plead in our prayers, and ask for the same things again and again. But behind this repetition is often a hidden vibration of lack, a feeling that what we desire is still far, still out of reach, still not ours. And when we ask from this place of absence, we are not actually creating. We are reinforcing the gap. Bruce Lipton's work reveals something profound. The body doesn't respond to your words, it responds to your energy. If you ask for love while vibrating loneliness, or for abundance while feeling fear, your biology doesn't hear the request. It hears the vibration, and the vibration is what instructs the field. Many speak as if the universe were deaf, as if it needs to be reminded, convinced, persuaded. But the universe is not an external force to be persuaded. It is an intelligent field, deeply attuned to frequency, and frequency is clearest in silence. In the stillness after a prayer, in the calm after intention, that is when the real conversation begins. When we talk too much to the universe, we often drown out the answer. We speak not from faith, but from fear disguised as devotion. The more we plead, the more we affirm that we believe we do not have. And the field listens to that belief more than the words themselves. Silence, in contrast, is a form of sacred confidence. It says, I have spoken, and now I listen. I have asked, and now I align. It's in this quiet receptivity that the field begins to rearrange. The power is not in the number of words, but in the resonance behind them. And often, the clearest resonance is found when no words are spoken at all. We are conditioned to believe that words carry the most power. That if we say the right things in the right order, with enough emotion, the universe will respond. But in the realm of energy, words are secondary. What truly communicates with the field is the invisible current flowing through you, your electromagnetic state. Joe Dispenza's research shows that the heart's electromagnetic field is far more powerful than that of the brain. It extends beyond the body, broadcasting your inner state into the quantum field. This field does not understand language, it understands coherence. It reads your energy, not your grammar. So when there's a mismatch between what you say and what you feel, the field does not respond to your words, it responds to your vibration. Bruce Lipton's teachings take this further. He reminds us that the biology of belief operates silently. You do not reprogram your body with verbal declarations. You reprogram it when your emotional state shifts. It is in the feeling, not the phrasing, that transformation begins. When your nervous system calms, when your heart softens, when your breath deepens, that is when your entire biology aligns with a new message. In this space of alignment, silence becomes potent. It becomes the clear channel through which the field receives your signal. There is no interference, no contradiction, just pure resonance. That's why silence is not emptiness, it's precision. It's the space where what you truly feel can be heard by what truly responds. The more you rely on words to manifest, the more you risk masking your real frequency. The universe doesn't need your voice to understand you. It listens to your coherence. And often the most coherent signal is sent in stillness. In the early hours of the morning, before the world fully awakens, there is a sacred softness in the air, a stillness that feels almost suspended in time. That is where silence becomes most accessible, not just external quiet, but inner receptivity. And in that space, something profound begins to happen. The mind stops reaching, the body stops resisting, and the field starts responding. This kind of silence is not passive, it's a living, breathing alignment. A moment when you no longer try to understand with thought, but with presence. It begins with breath, slow, aware, not manipulated. Simply noticed, the kind of breath that lets the body know it is safe. From there, the awareness shifts inward, not toward thinking, but toward sensing. Where in the body feels tense? Where does the energy feel dense? This is not a task to fix anything. It is simply an act of witnessing. And then something remarkable happens. In the absence of words, your energy reorganizes. The mind begins to drift toward the alpha state, calm, creative, open. The body softens into stillness. The heart becomes the speaker, even if no sound is made. You are not affirming. You are not asking. You are not interpreting. You are simply being, without needing to define the being. This kind of silence does not require a mountain or a monastery. It can be cultivated in 7 minutes. 7 minutes where you step out of effort and into coherence. 7 minutes where your system resets, not because you made it happen, but because you allowed it to. Silence becomes the container for new alignment, a bridge between the invisible and the physical. And when practiced before sleep or at dawn, when the brainwaves naturally soften, this silence speaks more clearly than any affirmation ever could. It is in this quiet, attentive space that your field begins to remember its true frequency. Not the one created by your fears, but the one seated in your soul. Before anything becomes visible, it exists in a space of waiting, of gestation, of unseen transformation. Silence is that space. It is not emptiness, but origin. Not absence, but the fertile ground from which life emerges. It is the womb of vibration, dark, warm, mysterious, holding what has not yet been spoken into form. To speak too soon is to interfere with this sacred process. Just as opening a seed before it sprouts would destroy its potential, interrupting the silence with impatience fractures the subtle alignment between your intention and the field. Manifestation has its own timing, its own intelligence, and silence honors that. It is the gesture of trust that says, I have planted the seed. Now I let it grow. Words are important, but they are not the place where creation begins. Creation begins in the unseen, in the quiet, in the soft, undisturbed soil of consciousness. That's why the most powerful shifts often happen when we are not performing, not explaining, not trying, but simply allowing. The metaphor of the seed in the earth speaks deeply here. It grows in silence, it expands in darkness. It reaches before it rises, and when it does finally emerge, it carries with it the strength of everything it became in secret. The same is true of your soul's desires. They do not need to be shouted. They need to be felt, held, and trusted within the silence of your own being. Spiritual silence is not a void to escape from. It is the source to return to. It is where intentions are not just made but metabolized, where your deepest frequency fuses with the matrix of creation. And just like a womb, it doesn't ask for effort. It asks for surrender, because that is where life begins, in the unseen, in the quiet, in the sacred pulse of silence. There is a kind of restlessness that settles in after we've set an intention, a quiet, persistent urge to check, to monitor, to ask again. This urge is not harmless. It is a signal of doubt, a whisper of disbelief that what we asked for might not come, or worse, that we were never truly heard. And this subtle vibration of uncertainty, though often unnoticed, is enough to disturb the entire frequency we have been cultivating. Anxiety doesn't always shout. Sometimes it creeps in through constant thinking, through the inability to let go, through the endless rehearsing of outcomes. And that noise, though internal, creates interference. The field does not reject your intention, it simply responds to your coherence. And when the mind grows louder than the soul, coherence begins to dissolve. Many people engage in spiritual practices with devotion, visualizations, prayers, affirmations, but they forget what comes next: the silence, the receiving, the trust. Manifestation is not just about the moment of asking. It is equally, if not more, about what you do or do not do after. If your system remains noisy, the field cannot deliver its message. It cannot complete the circuit, because it cannot find stillness within you. The pause after the intention is sacred. It is not the absence of action. It is the presence of alignment. It is where the field begins to rearrange itself in response to your signal. If you fill this space with noise, the signal becomes distorted. It's like trying to hear a whisper in the middle of a storm. The whisper is still there, but you can no longer hear it. Silence, then, is not a delay in the manifestation. It is part of the manifestation. It is where the unseen begins to move into form, where the response takes shape in the invisible. And only those who know how to listen truly listen will recognize it when it comes. Not because it shouted, but because it arrived. In the stillness, they had the courage to hold. In the stillness, something sacred realigns. Bruce Lipton's work reminds us that it is not the gene that determines our reality, but the environment in which the gene is expressed. And silence, when it is conscious and attuned, becomes the most fertile environment of all. It creates space. It softens resistance. It opens the inner landscape where transformation can finally take root. To be silent is not to withdraw from life. It is to become one with the movement that precedes form. It is to trust that what you have asked has already been heard, that what you have felt has already begun to shape the field. It is the highest expression of faith, not in words but in vibration. And it is in this state of deep inner confidence that the body begins to respond. The cells recalibrate. The energy reorganizes. The invisible starts to listen. Neville Goddard said, "Feeling is the secret." And it is in the silence that this secret is revealed. For feeling cannot be forced nor faked. It emerges when the mind grows quiet and the heart becomes the guide. And when that feeling, true, coherent, embodied, meets the field, creation begins. Not as a miracle outside you, but as a reflection rising from within. This is not about never speaking again. It is about speaking less and perceiving more. It is about letting go of the need to explain, to insist, to push. It is about learning to live from a place where energy comes first and words come second, where the resonance of your being is louder than the voice of your fear. The universe does not require volume to understand you. It does not respond to how many times you ask. It responds to the depth of your alignment. And sometimes the clearest message you can send is this: silence. A silence that says, "I trust." A silence that says, "I am ready." A silence that holds the door open for the answer that is already on its way.